Welcome, everyone, to our Women for Kansas virtual chapter. We're glad to have you here again. We're excited about having Dr. Wickstrom present. And for those of you that don't know about Women for Kansas, we are a group of women, and guys can come too, but mostly women. And we advocate for moderate legislative policy and also legislatures. And of course, this year, that's where our focus is on the election. So we're glad to have you here. Just some information. Oh, and you can go for more information. You can go to womenforkansas.org. And there you'll find everything you need to know about us. And we'll hope that you will join us. You can put your questions in the Q&A, and Dr. Ty, who is our moderator, will get them to Dr. Wickstrom after she's done presenting. Let's see, some other things, some housekeeping things, or just some informational deals. I wanted to share these postcards. Cool. And you will be getting emails about some of the information that Dr. Wickstrom is talking about, also about where you can get those free postcards. It's really a cool group. They're quilters that have gotten together and have made these available. Another thing that you can get from us are these really cool buttons. Also, these really cool shirts that Ty was able to get for us. And then you can get these stickers, Row Rage. These are really cool, hot off the presses. Let's see, and Ty, I want to introduce, everybody needs to introduce themselves. So I'm going to be quiet, let them introduce themselves.
Susan, you want to go?
Sure. Hi, I'm Susan Osborne. I'm on the executive committee of Women for Kansas, and I'm located in Wichita.
Okay, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah McCallum. I am co-leading the virtual chapter, and I'm in Overland Park.
And I'm Ty Edwards. I'm also on Women for Kansas Executive Committee, and I'm in Lawrence today. And I also wanted to let everyone know that Women for Kansas has already also started a political action committee, a PAC, and we have some plans for some activities we're going to do for the general election. So we'll be sending out information to you with our website and some info on how you can support that work as we work to break the supermajority in the legislature this year. It's our view that no matter who becomes president, we in Kansas need to have a moderate leading legislature in order to protect all of Women for Kansas's legislative priorities, including things related to education, reproductive rights, etc. And so that's one of our big goals for this year. And after that, Pam, I'm going to send it back to you so you can introduce our speaker.
Okay, very good. Dr. Wickstrom has been a resident of Prairie Village for over 30 years. During that time, she's practicing high-risk obstetrics, as a maternal fetal medicine physician, caring for patients with complicated pregnancies. She has 2 grown children who make her incredibly proud, and a husband of almost 40 years who deeply supports her with her convictions. She's focused on the education of her patients, their families, and fellow Kansans on matters of access to health care and civil rights. The Dobbs decision of June 2022, overturning Roe versus Wade, was the spark that lit her passion for understanding the inner workings of the state legislature and the impact of our elections. She dedicates her time to her work, her family, a maternity center in southern Haiti, and the education of Kansas voters toward informed advocacy through a variety of social media and nonprofit organizations. Thank you so much, Dr. Wickstrom, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Pam. I am so delighted to be here. This topic, Project 2025, is kind of become all-consuming for me. I live and breathe this stuff now. I promise it's not as toxic as it sounds. And I wanted to make this something that's more real to each of us and make this something that we can feel comfortable talking about with people, because it's really important to have a background and understand what's going on here. So let's get to it. Project 2025 is the extremist right wing. I won't call it conservative. I refuse, because they aren't conserving anything, and they're planning to return our country to some mythical better time which never existed. So it's their blueprint for the next time a president takes office that aligns with their views. Technically, it's not the Trump administration plan, because if he doesn't win in 2024, they're just going to rename it and try again in 2028. It does, however, line up almost word for word with other documents like the platform of the Republican National Committee and Agenda 47, which comes from the Trump campaign. So, based on a July 2022 document called Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise, this 922-page behemoth was authored by the Heritage Foundation and 100 of their closest friends, including leaders of their own think tank, former administrators from the Trump administration during his 2016 to 2019 term, and billionaire backers like the famous Koch brothers in Kansas. But the history of Project 2025 actually goes back to the 1980s. When I first started voting, which tells you how old I am, when the then fledgling Heritage Foundation saw how ineffective President Nixon was at getting any traction during his presidency for their regressive values. So they produced this manuscript called Manuscript for Leadership, Policy Management in a Conservative Administration. Yes, I am reading that right off a page. And they presented it to President Reagan's transition team. That document was 3,000 pages long. I'm so grateful to only have had to read 1,000 pages, I gotta tell you. The idea was to offer this new administration a manual for restraining the federal government, and Reagan embraced this ideology. Now, in the sense that I'm a Republican, I've been a Republican forever, and I do believe in small government, so I can see why that would have been appealing at the time. The question is, how far does it go? Some of those policies have shaped our nation through Reagan's presidency, and the Heritage Foundation saw some continued success during Bush and Bush II. Importantly, those principles right now are already at play in Republican-led states like Texas, Missouri, Tennessee, Louisiana. So Project 2025 is not some future thing. It is already here. Oh, and including our stacked Supreme Court. That's all part of the plan as well. So when you see the even more far-reaching mandate for 2025, it's designed to have legislation that's crafted, potential employees already vetted, plans to close and or combine most federal agencies that rein in corporations and billionaires that are already set in place. These employees won't just have signed up. They will go through a presidential administration academy to learn how to use our government to advance their regressive agenda. So what are the 4 pillars of Project 2025? According to the explainer from Red, Wine, and Blue, and there'll be some links in the email you'll receive, one of them is something to read and the other one is a YouTube video to watch. So whether you're an auditory learner or a visual learner, we got you. All right, so this is straight out of that Red, Wine, and Blue explainer. These include a playbook of teams and personnel who would replace experienced employees of federal agencies that keep our country running with loyalists that will promote only the priorities of the president. Second, a database of 20,000 sworn loyalists already vetted and ready to go to work on Inauguration Day. Third, their Presidential Administration Academy is poised to train those appointees to use their position in government to advance this agenda. 4, the mandate for leadership itself, that's the 1,000-page document that I plowed through. I needed at least one glass of wine to get through that, goes into detail on every facet of American life, giving explicit directions for how to dismantle our democracy. I wish I were being dramatic. Pointing out just a few of the goals of this extremist agenda, they plan to institute a national abortion ban. Now, if my Y is my high-risk patients, And this goes against everything that I need in my toolbox to help them have their healthiest pregnancies and their healthiest lives. Clearly, that one's really getting to me. But they also plan to reverse the FDA approval of abortion pills, mifepristone specifically. They already have a case in front of the Supreme Court, the US Supreme Court. Until then, they would track, limit, and ultimately ban the mailing of abortion pills through something called the Comstock Act. I don't have time to go into that right now, but look at Jessica Valenti's newsletter if you want to know about that. They would restrict doctors' ability to provide telehealth for medical abortions. We were just talking about how much we love, the one thing we love out of the pandemic is this whole idea that we can meet virtually, and telehealth has been just revolutionized in OBGYN practice. And so this way they could strictly scrutinize the companies and factories that make abortion pills, and they're already all over the pharmacies that are distributing them, even before this goes into place. Project 2025 directs their government employees to demand data from states that currently allow abortion. So much for the HIPAA Act. They would stop federal agencies from using the word abortion and would have the government declare that abortion is murder. So I look forward to losing my license and going to federal prison and not practicing medicine again. Not. And if that becomes the law of the land and they're tracking who has abortions, criminalizing women is next. Rooted in right-wing Christian nationalism, that's an important phrase to keep in your head. Project 2025 uses religious justification to demonize recreational sex and contraception. And IVF and STD testing are also on the chopping block. The plan rejects regulations that reduce, so I'm on a new topic. That was all about the reproductive rights. Now we're going to talk environmental issues. So the plan rejects the regulations that are currently in place to reduce environmental harm, all the progress that we've made. It seeks to reduce or eliminate the EPA and other agencies focused on environmental protection. It would take us out of the Paris Accords with international cooperation for environmental protections. It would reduce funding for renewable energy while expanding Arctic oil drilling and Western coal mining. Great. It would remove the US, I just said this, from international climate change agreements, and it would remove domestic protections for endangered species, other wildlife, and federally owned lands. Next thing that worries me about this, Project 2025 intends to destroy public education. The plan suggests eliminating teachers' abilities to organize together, overhauling the US Department of Education curriculum to align with these extremist religious viewpoints, and ultimately eliminating the Department of Education. Instead of supporting public education, this plan would divert public money to private and religious schools and vouchers. And a blow to many who have recently been helped, it would roll back student debt relief efforts. Programs that help feed low-income kids would also be abolished. I'm like, whew, this is a lot. It's like getting a drink from a fire hydrant, I know. In a shameless attack on human rights, particularly for LGBTQ plus people, the plan mandates a biblically based definition of marriage and family, that of heterosexual two-parent families only. It demonizes and potentially criminalizes transgender people and would prevent transgender people from serving in the military. It would remove federal protections against LGBTQ people, allowing them to be fired for their sexual or gender identity. The plan suggests conversion therapy for LGBTQ people, and some of the language leans toward anti-surrogacy positions, which would impact family planning for LGBTQ citizens. If you don't know what conversion therapy is, this is the idea that we can sort of beat the gay out of people. If we can send them to camps or to therapy that involves things like they lock them in a room where they don't have any contact with anybody and get them in a very vulnerable position, and then tell them how evil being gay is and convince them that they'll go to hell if they're still gay. It's really heinous stuff, and it has been condemned up one side and down the other by medical groups all over the United States. Okay, in short, between ending DEI and fair housing programs, deporting millions of immigrants, and sending applicants for legal immigration, ending applicants for, it'd be sending them back to their own countries, which would reduce visas for agricultural, construction, and hospitality sectors. How many rural businesses count on legal immigrants to survive and stay competitive? Sorry. Imagine farming and food production grinding to a halt without migrant workers to keep crops and livestock thriving. This is going to affect rural Kansas. Most threatening to the checks and balances of our American government, I haven't even gotten to the worst part yet, y'all, is Project 2025's plan to give literally unlimited power to the executive branch in the person of the president. This started out in July of this year when the Supreme Court said, you know, if the president does something that's part of his official duties, he can't be held liable. He can't be arrested or convicted for that. So this has already begun. The lawmakers and judicial branch will no longer be able to counteract any outrageous or harmful moves by the dictator-in-chief. It's for real. Though the Trump campaign has tried to distance itself from Project 2025, now that the word is out and people are not happy with what they're seeing, he's inextricably tied to the architects of the plan. So back in 2022, he was at a Heritage Foundation dinner and he was praising this plan. And he said, this is a great group. They're going to lay the groundwork and detailed plans for exactly what our movement will do. And what your movement, talking to the Heritage Foundation people, will do when the American people give us a colossal mandate to save America. Former Trump administration officials who have been directly affiliated with Project 2025 include his former director of the Office of Management and Budget, acting defense secretary, housing and urban development secretary, deputy chief of staff, former Justice Department senior counsel, and his vice president nominee, J.D. Vance, wrote a glowing foreword to an upcoming book by Kevin Roberts, who is the leader of the Heritage Foundation and the author of Project 2025. Now, the funny part is they were going to release that book this summer. It's been delayed until after the election before they're going to release this book. I cannot imagine why. So this book describes how extremists will take over the US government. No wonder they don't want it out in the open until after the election. So no matter what people tell you, Donald J. Trump is in this up to his neck. In the email that you're going to receive, you'll see those explainers about Project 2025. But there's also a lot of information about the next section of this talk, because if I've got you all depressed by now, it's time for us to receive a call for action and realize, what do we personally as Women for Kansas need to do about this business? First, continue getting the word out with reputable sources rather than just posting memes. I will post a meme, a snarky meme, right along with the next girl. It's kind of my jam. But when we're talking one-to-one with people or talking to a group of people, we need to make sure we're being genuine and respectful, because we're armed with the truth. And we can turn around the proportion of people who have not heard about Project 2025 and make sure the majority are informed, because that's what's going to swing this election. When you post something that says Project 2025 is Trump's agenda and it's bad, the loyalists will come back and say, it's not his plan, you're just fear mongering. it's important to frame the plan and its risks accurately and invite people to read for themselves. So the link I'm going to send in the email is actually from Snopes. You know, the fact checker people, they're nonpartisan. They're going to call a spade, and they're going to say what it's really about. So that's the kind of website you can actually trust and you can direct people to. So since the document is openly available online, if they want to read all 1,000 pages, it's actually 922. I'm exaggerating. Knock yourselves out, folks. But successful ways to talk about the plan. There's a lot of different ways to frame this that are going to help people become engaged and ask questions. So you can say, Project 2025 is an extreme plan that will give the president new and unchecked powers over federal agencies, eliminate abortion access, and roll back action on climate change, LGBTQ+ rights, and other areas. So that's going to be more likely to hit for people who maybe have those a little more progressive views, although the majority of Americans believe the government should stay out of abortion decisions. So you could probably hit with just about anybody with that one. It's kind of how we won vote no. Do you want the government to tell you what to do in your exam room and in your bedroom? I think not. So if you've got someone who's a little more progressive leaning, you can just state simply, those are the things it's going to wipe out. People presented with some of the policy proposals in Project 2025. You can say it's a plan to give the president and his loyalists unlimited power, and it will hurt the middle-class working Americans. So that'll get people's attention no matter where they land on a political spectrum. Policies that would accomplish these harms include removing the child tax credit, abolishing Head Start, creating tariffs on imported goods, which will drive up prices, removing overtime pay, raising taxes for average workers while giving tax breaks to the ultra wealthy. Nobody's going to want that. If they understand that these are the policies that are being described in Project 2025, people are going to pay attention. One other place that I found a lot of common ground with my neighbors is talking about the effect of these policies on public schools. Project 2025 proposes to end the Department of Education and stop Title I funding. These are federal funds to literally every public school in America. It would remove any federal funding specifically to schools or school districts which don't adhere to their religious nationalist ideology. So this starts with putting the 10 Commandments in every classroom and telling teachers what books they can or can't teach. But it ends with no federal funding for you unless you toe the line and teach our narrow view of the world. It's going to force school voucher programs and further loosen any restrictions on these private and charter schools. Already, one big gap between private and public schools is who they can accept as students. Public schools are a take one, take all proposition. And if you're in a rural area where you don't have a private school, what good does that school voucher do to you? So that's not just Project 2025, that's the Kansas legislature, Christy Williams. You know, it's a thing in our state, and we need to be working against that. The plan, Project 2025, also removes funding for students with disabilities. And it creates avenues for students and parents' private information to be released to the federal government. Kansans are not gonna like that when they see that one. The National Education Association, American Federation of Teachers, which are the teachers' unions, would be under attack. Supplemental meal programs I mentioned for low-income students, sorry, no more funding. And this is going to create a perfect storm of poor working conditions for teachers, poor learning conditions for students, and intentionally setting public schools up for failure. What about rural America? Speaking of Kansas, currently in our Congress, rural priorities such as the Farm Bill are lined up with food aid programs like SNAP, which are a priority in more populated areas. So those two go hand in hand, and that's how legislators get both bills through Congress. Project 2025 would split these programs apart and propose budget cuts for both. The project proposes ending safety nets like agriculture risk coverage and price loss coverage programs, which pay farmers of selected commodities when the prices of those commodities fall below a predetermined level. Sorry, you're used to having some backup if the market goes south or you have a horrible crop year. Too bad, so sad. It also pushes to cut government funding for crop insurance, for which taxpayers currently pick up about 2/3 of the cost, and would end the sugar program, which manages U.S. sugar production to keep prices high. Not as big a deal in Kansas, where we're all about wheat, not sugar, but still, the point is they're going to throw the farmers under the bus. You won't have any workers because there won't be any migrant workers, legal immigrants to work your crops, and you won't have any crop insurance. Sorry. Project 2025 also doesn't stint in its attack on democratic priorities, such as food aid, a long-standing target of the far right. You're probably tired of hearing this phrase, Project 2025, already. But if you are interested in being armed with even more information, I'm going to ask Ty to put up a website called the Passionistas Project. So these are these two amazing sisters. They're part of the Red, Wine, and Blue Trouble Nation. And what they do is they have all kinds of courses and all kinds of ways that people can get together in community. But one of the things they have put in place is a course. If you come down on that left side to the courses, so you would want to see what the courses are. And then specifically, you want to go to the Stop Project 2025 course. Initially, this was something they got paid money for, to teach people more about Project 2025. They said, you know what? This is a big, hairy deal. We need to make sure everyone knows about it. And there's two different ways to take that course. If you're a self-paced learner, you can just read the whole thing at whatever pace you prefer to. But if you're more of a I don't want to face this on my own, I would like to bounce these points and proposals off of some other people in a cadre of students. You can actually do this week by week with other people learning the program in 4 installments, in a 4-week installment. So these guys, they're awesome. Besides just getting the word out on Project 2025, which can be pretty depressing, how else can we stop the momentum of this regressive extremist movement? At the ballot box. Talk to your social circle, your friends, your family, your work friends, your church and civic organization friends, all of them, to make sure they are registered to vote. And a very scary thing that's been going on recently is that there's been a lot of actions at the state level cutting the voter rolls. In Texas, 2 million people were taken off the voter rolls for all kinds of things. Maybe they changed addresses within the same county and they shouldn't have to change their voter registration, but because they changed their address, they were taken off. Maybe they just haven't voted in the last couple of elections because there wasn't anything that really lit their fire. Sorry, you're gone. Now, I've not personally seen this happen in Kansas, but do you think this girl has checked her voter registration at least once a week? Yes, I have, because I am not giving away my shot, as it says in Hamilton. I'm not going to let anybody take me off those voter rolls, and I suggest you don't either. So check it out on vote.org or the Secretary of State website. Make sure your registration is up to date. Follow up with your people. Make sure they have a plan to vote. Help them arrange rides, help them arrange time off work if they need it. And something really neat that just happened. There has been a law that's been in place for 2 years that has said you can't literally sit at a table and help people sign up and register to vote, because the Kansas legislature called that impersonating an elective official, and they made it illegal. Also, you can't take people's filled out ballots that they filled out, like if they've done an advance mail-in ballot, you can't pick them up for them. Let's say there's a disabled person and they just can't get to the box to send it in. You can take up to 10. The ACLU and Loud Light and Appleseed were all trying to get that part overturned as well. But one person can only take 10 advance voting ballots to the ballot box. But something else that was really voter suppression got overturned by the Kansas Supreme Court, which is that they said the signature on your advance ballot has to match what's on your driver's license, which they have images of. Well, I have a kid with dysgraphia. They literally never sign anything the same twice. And if you have elderly people or people with a tremor, there's all kinds of reasons people's signature would look different. And my kid got their last ballot polled and made a provisional ballot till they could go to the county office and cure their ballot so it would be counted. Well, that's gone. It's no longer a thing. So finally, some good news about voting in Kansas, but don't get me started on gerrymandering. There's a video going around Facebook right now, and if I can find the source, I'm going to post it. I can't just post it off somebody else's page. I'm always going to check the source on something like that. But it's somebody from the Republican Party talking about, we can rewrite these districts so that we can defeat Sharice Davids and we can make 4 Republican districts at the national level by gerrymandering. They say the quiet part out loud. So if I can find that video, I'm going to be posting it, and I'll share it with our friends here at Women for Kansas so you can post it too. So how do you know who your candidates support? It's one thing for them to say what they're going to support. Remember when all those Supreme Court justices said they would never overturn Roe v. Wade? That's settled law. And then by gum, that's exactly what they did. Well, there are resources to see not just what they say, but what they've done. How have they actually voted? And what are they posting on their social media for the people that they think are a friendly audience? So resources like the League of Women's Voters, Vote 411, ActiveVote.net. I want to say more about them in a second. I think they're so much fun. And Kansas Choice Tracker. It's brand new. Choice Tracker has been in other states in the nation, but we just launched the Kansas branch like 3 weeks before the primary. And you can look on there and you can see a rating for the person that's running for election in your area to see how they rate on a scale of pro-choice or anti-choice. So it's just, if you're kind of a one-issue voter, that's a really quick one-stop shop for that. Pick one and go for it. The fun part about ActiveVote.net, it's like the word activate only with the O, ActiveVote.net. You go on there and the first thing you do is take like a 4-question quiz about national policies. And that tells you where you fit on this 4-corner grid and how you line up with different legislators that are already in office right now. And so that's kind of fun because I didn't realize that I'm very local. I swayed a lot toward local issues than national issues, and that changed who I thought I'd be aligned with. So that's just for fun. And they have civics quizzes, which I'm a civics nerd, so I found that highly entertaining. And then you can look at every single candidate that would ever appear on your ballot. And you can see their website, you can see how they have voted in other elections. It's just a really fun, neat website to get a lot more information and really be informed when you show up at the ballot box. I think that's about enough. So if some of you have had some questions in the Q&A, lovely Ty is now going to read them off for us. So there's at least a couple of questions there, and I want to encourage you all to continue this conversation. I want to know what you do locally to help get out the vote in your area, and what are your personal resources? Where do you look for information about voting?
Okay, awesome. We've got a few questions already in the chat, so I'll start with those. Anybody else that wants to put them in the chat, please do so. Or I'm sorry, in the Q&A, post your questions there so we can get to those with Betsy. Okay, so here's one. So I have heard that Project 2025 dismantles FEMA, which helps Americans after natural disasters such as tornadoes or hurricanes. True or false?
True. What they do is they're rolling FEMA and what do you call those people that they just got started after 9/11? Homeland Security. They're rolling FEMA and Homeland Security into another branch of government, and all the people in those programs that have been working there and helping people with national emergencies, they're gone. They're fired.
Okay, so here's another one. Also, do you know their plan for the FDIC, which would affect banks and banking?
True, FDIC goes away. So that's federal insurance for your deposits that are in actual banks. Now, savings and loans have FSLIC. They're a different thing. But FDIC is a federal program to keep there from being a run on the bank, you know. So on Monday, the old white people happy line, which is what I have stocks, really I do. Don't pretend I don't. But that's what I call the stock market. It took a sharp dive on Monday and then it kind of leveled back out again. But when people freak out and they're like, oh my gosh, I need to go get all my money and put it under my mattress instead of in the stock market, there can be a run on the bank. And banks can fail. And that happened once in our living memory to banking, and they had to have a huge federal bailout. Well, since then, the FDIC has been a lot more active at making sure that doesn't happen. But we would no longer have that protection as individuals on our savings.
Awesome. Okay, well, not awesome, but thank you for that answer. What is the effect of Project 25 on higher education in Kansas?
So some of the things that will be affected, some of the federal funding can be affected. Student loans are not going to be forgiven as we expect them to be now. The biggest change is in the diversity, equity, inclusion programs right now that assure that the most qualified person for the position, regardless of the color of their skin or where they were born or what language, you know, whoever's the most qualified is in that position now. Well, that all goes away. And now it's all up for grabs for people that meet a certain demographic. So that's definitely going to affect. On a federal level, that will affect our state universities. And make no mistake, if the Kansas legislature continues to have its regressive supermajority, that's only the beginning. And even if Trump doesn't win in November, our Kansas legislature is going to keep trying to stifle and dismantle our universities. You know, you only see the bills that actually make it all the way to the floor and get debated, and then the governor vetoes, and then like, do we have enough to override the veto? I've read every single bill in the 23, and at least the excerpt. Some of them I didn't go into the whole 4-page thing, right? But every single bill in the 23 docket that were all proposed. And there was some stuff in there that would curl your toes, but it never even made it to committee, much less out of committee.
Thank goodness.
Yes.
Okay, so what could happen to healthcare, especially the Affordable Care Act?
Well, the Republican nominee has said right out, even back when he first took office, he said, we're going to repeal Obamacare and replace it with something better. Did they ever do that? No, of course they didn't. And in the last 2 years, more people have enrolled in the marketplace in the Affordable Care Act by the millions than ever before. But if the federal government says, nope, no more Affordable Care Act, because one of their goals is to privatize literally everything that's public right now, everything that's supported by the federal government and has like people that have been doing this for 30 years that are administering it, like, you know, the EPA and the FDA, they're going to wipe out all of that and leave us to our own devices. Repeat the
Okay.
question for me. I've lost my train of thought.
Yeah, so is it going to take away the ACA? I mean, you have said that.
So definitely yes, because the trend is toward privatization. So if you heard any of the conversation about expanding Medicaid in Kansas, if you happen to watch the conversation about that in the committee, because it never even made it out of committee to the floor for a vote. Sad face. That's where Susan and I first got to know each other, is working with a group that's really trying to promote that. But what the people who just happen to sell private insurance, who also just happen to control that committee in the Kansas legislature, what those insurance salesmen said is, oh, we can do better with private insurance. And that's the whole point of Project 2025, is to line the pockets of the billionaires, of their aggressives and their cronies, and make sure they keep making money and we keep getting a worse product. And that includes health insurance.
Okay, so speaking of healthcare, you talked a little bit about the impact on reproductive healthcare, but do you think this could impact medical providers in ways even beyond reproductive healthcare?
Oh, well, first off, let's talk about the brain drain in states with regressive abortion bans to begin with. Idaho has now lost half of its OBGYNs. Missouri has lost a lot as well. And the medical students aren't coming into the medical schools in places that have regressive policies of all kinds, not just regarding abortion, because these are people of reproductive health care age. And they say, what if something happens to me while I'm a medical student? I can't get the care I need. I'm not going to go live there, even for the 4 years it takes to go to medical school. Similarly, 3 or 4 years for a residency program. No one's coming to those states if they know they're in danger and their family is in danger if they go to live there. So if you can't get medical students and residents to come work in your state, you're also not going to have providers to work in your state. And it's interesting, if you look at the map of the US and you put a little dot every place there's an abortion ban, and then you put a little dot everywhere there's a maternity care desert, no place to find prenatal care or a place to deliver your baby, that Venn diagram is a circle. It's all the same. And a lot of OBGYNs are also the primary care provider for the people that care for them. How many people go to their, if they got a UTI, they're not going to go to internal medicine, they're going to go to their OBGYN. But sorry, you don't get that if your provider has had to close up shop and move away.
Right, right. Okay, so you talked about this a little bit, but could you elaborate Project 2025's way of dealing with the U.S. Supreme Court, or how it thinks about the court? Yeah.
So that's the part that's already in place. So every one of those regressive Supreme Court appointees that were put in place during the Trump administration, they were handpicked by the Heritage Foundation. That's who asked for them to be put in place, because they knew what their legislative plan was going to be. And it's not just overturning Roe v. Wade. It's not just saying presidents have full immunity. It's you can be arrested for sleeping outdoors, criminalizing houselessness. It's, yes, schools can make students pray on the football field. All kinds of these regressive policies have already been upheld by our current Supreme Court. And Alito and Thomas are nearing, thank goodness, retirement age, right? And so they're going to be replaced. So part of what we're voting for in November is who's going to replace those two Supreme Court justices and make it a full house of regressives.
Okay, so what is the potential effect of Project 2025 on Social Security?
So it's interesting how they spell it out. The Project 2025 document, the mandate, doesn't actually come out and say wipe out Social Security, but it does talk about rewriting the federal budget so that the funds that currently are in Social Security, which we've all been putting in since we were 14 years old, detasseling corn in Nebraska, that would be me. All of that Social Security money is fair game to be rerouted into other budgetary priorities. So it's kind of sneaky and it's kind of sly, but it means it won't be guaranteed to be there.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
wow.
okay. So for you, when you doing your research and reading about this, what do you find most alarming when you are thinking about Project 2025?
I think that presidential powers are my number one thing that bothers me. I really believe when our founding fathers put together how this republic was supposed to work, they made 3 branches of government for a reason. The legislators make the laws, and the executive branch enforces the laws because it includes the Department of Justice, right? And the judicial branch helps interpret the laws. Everybody's got their part to play. But if you take these 2 branches away and it's all under one dictator, all you need is someone who either has the morals of an alley cat, as has been described by President Biden, or someone who's an absolute puppet for some of the people that are our nation's sworn enemies. That's not going to go well. And it also, to me, is a big part of why Kansans, the free state, are not going to put up for this crap, because no one person should have that much power over my life.
Great.
I'll have to take off my jacket soon. I'll be upset.
Okay. Can you give an example of how you would have a conversation with someone who either was Project 2025 curious or perhaps not maybe very much aware about it? How would you have a conversation with them to educate them on these problems?
So I'm going to go back to this part of my little script. I don't know how much you could tell I was reading out the script. I was reading out the script because I didn't want to miss anything. I don't want to forget anything. So if you've got someone who their whole shtick is public education and they're chafing already over the continued proposals for vouchers, I think that's the place to begin with this person. If the person you're talking to is much more about save the planet, you want to talk about those environmental harms that are built into Project 2025. If you've got someone who is like, vote no all the way, we said no in Kansas and no means no. And we just had the 2-year anniversary of August 2nd, which just warms my little heart. If that's their sort of single issue voter kind of thing, boy, do you have ammunition in Project 2025. So I would say go to the Red, White, and Blue explainer. If you want, Women for Kansas is just starting up their Trouble Nation group. If you're not familiar with Red, White, and Blue, it's a nationwide group of grassroots organizing housewives or suburban women. Most of us aren't housewives. I have a house husband, thank God. He does work, I promise, but he also cooks me dinner. It's the best. But it's a national group of thousands and thousands and thousands of women, and they're on the ground, boots on the ground, like grassroots, get things done people are Trouble Nation. And Women for Kansas is just starting to ramp theirs up, Kansans for Rights, which was a renamed Facebook group. It used to be Vote No Northeast Kansas. And we've got, 850 people right now in that. And a chunk of them actually want to do things, not just talk about them, actually want to get stuff done. So one of the things that you will find, I don't think I put it there. Oh yeah, I did. It's one of the links that's going to come in the email. And it's the landing page for the specific Kansans for Rights Trouble Nation group. But you're going to find, all you have to do is go to Red, White, and Blue and say, hey, where's there a Trouble Nation group near me? You're going to find it, and you're going to get concrete actions that you can take. People are hungry for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so someone else posted that one of the presidential candidates has told a crowd that if you vote for him, you will never have to vote again. Is this sort of what you think of as Project 2025
Yeah.
language.
This is right up there with the whole president has way too much power. The point is that they're going to have people. Oh, good. Oh, Susan put out the name of your Women for Kansas Trouble Nation group. It's called Women for Kansas Good Trouble Squad. So look that up. And that's already built into your virtual group. That's great. What they're going to do through Project 2025 is make it so it doesn't matter if you're a blue state or a red state or a purple state. You notice I have a purple jacket. I'm planning to turn Kansas purple. It's my goal. It doesn't matter because there are going to be federal mandates in place that keep your vote from making two piddly beans worth of difference. That's what dictators do. You think they have elections in Russia? Sure they do. Do you think it matters? No, it doesn't. And that's what it means when someone tells you out loud, you'll never have to vote again. It means it's a dictatorship and your vote will never matter again.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone asked about the websites you were referencing. You will get an email tomorrow. It probably will come from Zoom, but it'll have all the links that Betsy's been talking about in them, so you can access all of those. It'll come tomorrow. Okay, so I have a long question here. Okay, so based on the way you've talked about Project 2025 and some of the stages that have already been set, like you talked about the Supreme Court and some of the other language you've talked about, so the question is, isn't our best and only feasible strategy to try to elect Democrats to the State House and Senate seats and to Congress in order to find potential solutions to these problems?
So I'm so glad you brought that up, because one of the things I tell people all the time is, you know, there's this huge outpouring of support for the presidential ticket. Great, awesome. I don't think there's going to be that much of a problem getting people to vote on the presidential election. The problem is the down ballot candidates. The problem is voting in every race, knowing who your candidates are and what they believe in every single race. So when you're talking to people about these upcoming elections and you say, you know, here's something to know about our state representative in our district, or something to know about this candidate for the school board, get them to the poll to vote for that person or not vote for that person, as the case may be. It could happen. I guarantee if they're there to vote for Board of Education, they're not going to not vote for president, right? So all of us need to be getting our friends registered, informed, and to the polls about every down ballot race, because that's what affects our everyday lives the most.
That's right. Well, that is an excellent point to leave it. Our last few questions are actually gratitude. So thank you so much, Betsy, for sharing your information. We are going to post this video also on YouTube. I have had some people ask in the Q&A if the outline that Betsy showed could also be included in the email. So I will also include that in the email for everyone's reference, if that's helpful. So again, you can look on YouTube, probably take a day or two, and then we'll have it posted on the Women for Kansas YouTube channel. Another thing to remember is, just as Betsy said, in Women for Kansas, we believe democracy demands participation. And so just as Betsy was saying, the only elections that matter are not federal, right? They're state, they're local. Some of these are the most important ones you can focus on. And I will also share these links with our Women for Kansas social media guru so that some of these can be posted in our social media platforms as well. And any other comments from Pat, from Pam or Susan?
Yeah, I had a couple. One, I don't think I mentioned that Women for Kansas is nonpartisan. We have a lot of Republicans, independents, Democrats. The main thing is, yeah, right there, Betsy, Republican. The main thing to remember is what we're after is moderate, not these extremes on either end. Another idea I had, and there's so many things going around in my head, but you can make this fun. And one of the reasons I showed you, these free postcards, and Women for Kansas is working on this, as Ty said, make it fun. We've done this. We've had cheesecake, and it depends on what beverage you want, but you can have cheesecake and wine party. You can have cheesecake and sun tea party, and write those postcards. Our ladies, our women love to write postcards. So, think about friends that you can get together with and do this, and you will feel so good that you have done something. No matter what happens in this election, and of course, we're all praying that Trump won't get elected and that down ballot will get more reasonable people. But you will feel better about the fact that you did something to try and help. So that's what I'd like to leave you with.
And I'd like to
And-
mention that we have several people I know that are not, this is their first time attending the virtual chapter event. We had so much response to this that we turned it into a webinar. So we haven't had the back and forth questions that we've had in some of our monthly events, but the virtual chapter led by Pam and by Sarah are monthly. And I don't know, Pam, do you want to bring up a possible or probable next month, which ought to be another really good one?
Yes, September, I don't have my calendar in front of me, guys. What's the second? Is it the 8th? September 8th, I believe, because Labor Day is the first
September 8th.
Sunday. Yeah, September 8th. We're going to have Loud Light with us. And most of you know that Loud Light, Davis Hammett rocks and his people rock. And so they're going to be with us. And hopefully, fingers crossed, in October or late September, we're going to have Scott Schwab talk to us about election rules, because there's been some really weirdo things that have been happening, like Republicans signing up Marcy Francisco as a third-party candidate. How can that even happen? So we've got questions for him.
We'll have some questions for Mr. Schwab.
Yes, we have lots of questions for him. So hopefully we'll get that. But please put that on your calendar. The one in October, we don't know, because we're going with when Bob can be with us. Thanks, Susan. Yeah.
All right, well, thank everyone for joining us. And again, you'll watch for your email and watch on Women for Kansas YouTube channel and on our Women for Kansas socials. So thank you. Bye.